Thank you. How many people have seen the movie? How many people have read the book? Well, a lot fewer, but it's been out of print for a while, so I was supposed to have some for this, but they're going to be coming here in a few days. And, rather than trying to go point by point with where the movie strayed from what really happened, I'll just tell you what happened. It was November 5th, 1975, 34 years ago. It was a Wednesday. There were 7 of us out there. In the movie, they had just 5. We got the crew boss, Mike, Ken Peterson, Dwayne Smith, John Gillette, Alan Dallas, and Steve Pierce. And like me, 34 years later, all of these guys stand by their story. You know, what happened, happened. And it was a work day. We just finished a long, hard day cutting trees, and it was starting to get dark, and we all got into this crew cab truck, you know. So that's how 7 of us fit into this truck, 3 in the front, 4 in the back. And we're driving down this rough dirt road out of there, and we saw some lights coming through the trees, just little glimmers at first. Nobody was really particularly alarmed when we first saw it because it was deer hunting season, and you know, occasionally we'll see hunters or campers out. And so, as the closer we got, the stranger it seemed, because it was coming from above where I figured the top of the ridge would be. Little glimmers coming through the trees. Just, you know, a map here of where it happened on the rim. A lot of people don't know that there's quite a bit of forest in Arizona. And so, when we finally got around the trees to where we could see it, there was kind of a break, an opening there, and there this thing was, you know. It was just unmistakable. It was, Alan Dallas yelled out, "It's a flying saucer," right off the bat, because, you know, the skeptics were trying to say, oh, they just saw the planet Jupiter off in the sky or something. But there was no mistaking. This was a metallic object hovering in the sky there, less than 100 feet away. But so many times when we've been you know, in the woods, and we'll catch sight of an animal, you know, you say, there goes a bear, there goes a deer, you know. By the time the rest of the guys look, it's almost gone, you know. So that's kind of the impression I had here, that, you know, it was just going to take off. And so I jumped out of the truck and started towards it, thinking it would be gone before I got close. And what I was doing really alarmed the other guys, and they started yelling and screaming at me to get back in the truck. And I pretty quickly started having second thoughts about what I was doing myself, and I slowed down, and I didn't want to look foolish, and so I made myself continue on. We could hear the rumble, the sound that it was making. It was a kind of a mixture of sounds, some very, very high-pitched and some very low rumbles. I think probably off the range of human hearing on both ends of the spectrum. But they were screaming and yelling at me to get away from there, and you know, that part of the movie was pretty accurate. At one point, you know, I got to where I was looking up at an angle, a pretty steep angle at it. I couldn't really get in much closer because there was a big pile of logging debris there. But I was standing there, and it suddenly started to move. It rose up a little, not real steady. It was kind of an unsteady motion. And the sound got louder, like it was powering up. It was real, you know, you could feel it as well as hear it. And it scared me, so I jumped down behind the end of a log that was sticking out of this pile of debris, and those guys were really frantic screaming at me to get back in the truck, and you know, I didn't need them to tell me that. I was thinking, how am I going to, you know, get out of here? I felt, you know, a little safer hiding behind the log, but I wanted to get, so I was thinking I would raise up and take off, you know, just make a sprint back to the truck. But when I raised up, I just felt this shock go through my body. It's kind of like an electric shock. Or if you've ever been hit real hard when you didn't see it coming, that's the way it felt, and I just blacked out. But the guys in the truck said that a bolt of energy came out of the bottom of this craft and hit me in the upper body, and it threw me back through the air. I said it just looked like a grenade going off. The force of the blast. One of the guys, Dwayne Smith, he said that, you know, later he became an electrician, and he said he's worked around high voltage. To him, it sounded really electrical, like a lightning bolt or something. But in the police report, the deputy that interviewed Ken Peterson, he said he described it as looking like a long blue flame. But, you know, whether it was a beam or a lightning bolt or whatever, they thought it killed me. They said it threw me back through the air and my body hit the ground limp and dust boiled up around me, and they just knew they were next, you know, and so they panicked and left. And those guys have gotten some criticism for fleeing, you know, but I got to say I can't blame them, you know, in the situation that they were in. First of all, they thought I was dead. What good would it do to get themselves killed, you know, if it already killed me? Somebody yelled out it killed him, and everybody was telling the boss, let's go, and I don't think he needed to be told. They drove and almost wrecked the truck getting out of there. But they did what they had to do. It was really the smartest thing to do. They had no weapons, and so they took off, and they went as soon as they got to where they put some good distance between them. They stopped and they got out, and they said they were just all kinds of screaming and yelling, trying to decide what to do. And they started to build a fire, and I guess they didn't actually build a fire, but I think what happened was a deer hunter went by out on the rim road, and so one of the guys suggested they chase them down and see if they could get help, you know, somebody with some guns. And so they tried that, and they weren't able to catch up with them. So finally, you know, Mike and Ken were saying, you know, we've got to go back and see if we can help them. And some of the other guys said, no way, you know, we shouldn't go back there, you know, that's too dangerous. But unlike in the movie where they got out to stand alone in the dark, I mean, these guys aren't going to do that, you know. They at least felt safer, you know, being in the truck. They all went back, not just Mike like in the movie. So I got to hand it to them for having the courage to do that, to, you know, figuring that the responsible thing to do was to try to rescue me and see if maybe I had survived what happened, and, you know, if I needed help, they were going to try to do something. So although, you know, I've kind of had some rough times with some of the guys, especially the crew boss, about that, because my family, you know, sort of condemned them for not being more heroic immediately. I got to give them credit that that was a very brave thing to do, to go back that night and try to help. They did make a search. They were unable to find me, and so then they went back to town, and they had quite an argument about what to do. Some of them said, well, let's just get some friends and relatives and go back, but they finally decided that they'd have to, you know, face the music and go to the authorities, because, you know, what if I was never found, and, it just wouldn't be a good thing for the law enforcement not to have been informed. So they went and called the local deputy, and he came down, and some of these guys were still crying. Everybody was so shook up. They knew something very terrible, something had really happened, but deputy called the sheriff, and the undersheriff came with him, and they all knew something very terrible had happened, but they immediately had the suspicion that, that we'd gotten into a fight and I'd been killed, and that these guys had made up this story to cover up for why there was no more Travis. So the sheriff had no doubt that something quite serious had happened, and so he took them back that night, the sheriff did, and made a search of his own. And again, no results. The undersheriff was an expert tracker, and they were unable to find any trace of me. And so some of the guys in the crew have not been real proud about the way they reacted, the fact that some of them cried and were so, panicked, but their reactions are nothing compared to what I was going through. The sheriff got a big search going. It lasted 5 days. He crisscrossed the area with men on horseback, men on foot. They had this helicopter here and some airplanes, and just combed the area. The tracking dogs weren't of a whole lot of use. They were not able to find any trail outside the clearing, of course. And so during the search, one of the Forest Service guys come up and grabbed Dwayne Smith by the collar and jerked him up there and said, "All right, where'd you hide the body?" And so my brother intervened and stopped the confrontation there. But the men all said, "Look, we're telling the truth. Give us sodium pentothal, lie detector test, anything you want." And so the sheriff arranged for a lie detector test for the men, and they brought in this man, Cy Gilson, who was the state police polygraph examiner, had been for years, the best in the state, and he tested the men, and they passed. Now, the media, it was reported to the media that one of the men had an inconclusive, but we got a hold of the police file, and even the police file said that the sixth man's test was that he had told the truth. But because he got in a big argument with the examiner and walked out, they gave him an inconclusive. But that certainly did away with the theory that they killed me. I woke up, I was on my back on a hard raised surface, and a light above me. I was in a lot of pain. I was in and out of consciousness for quite a long time. But the pain, led me to think that I'd been hurt and taken to a hospital. And I wasn't thinking real clearly, but I remembered approaching that object and thinking that I must have been hurt somehow, But I was lying on my back, and there was a device laying across my chest. And so I didn't want to move too much. It hurt to move, and I didn't want to interfere with anything the doctors might be doing. But when I finally, my vision cleared a little better, and I saw these creatures standing over me, that was when I knew for sure I was not in the hospital. And I was so weak I could hardly move, but somehow I got the strength, and I guess it was just a jolt of fear at seeing these things and realizing where I was, that gave me a burst of energy, and I was able to rise up and knock this thing off of me and back away from them. They came around and came towards me, but I grabbed, there was a bunch of instruments and things along this counter behind me, and I grabbed for something to defend myself with, and there was this long clear glass or plastic. It was either rod or a tube or something like that, but I grabbed it and swung it at him, and then I hit it down on the table, trying to break the end of it off, get something sharp. I wasn't really trying to attack him, I was just trying to keep him away from me, and it must have worked because they stopped all at once before they were in range, and I was, just hysterical, flailing at them, and so all at once they turned and went out into the passage outside the door. This was a very dimly lit and cramped space. It was really very bare, not hardly anything in the way of features. I didn't see any screws, heads, or bolts, or rivets, or welds, or anything like that. In the movie, they have it looking real organic and irregular and lots of debris around, but it wasn't like that. Very sterile environment. They'd gone to the right, and so I was afraid they'd come back, and I just wanted to get away from them. It wasn't, anything well thought out. It was just sort of a panic move to just put some distance and try to get out of this thing, which might not have been too smart. Had I been able to open a door or something, that might have been worse situation. But I tried. So I went down this little narrow passage, and I kept looking over my shoulder and wondering if they were pursuing me, but because the passage curved so tightly, I couldn't see very far behind me or ahead of me, which really kind of, made me feel, it just added to my panic. And so I just went ahead and scrambled forward, and I even went past one doorway that I might have been able to escape through, but I came to a door, and there was a little room there with a chair in the middle. And when I went in there, I could see that there were points of light on the walls and floor. I don't know if this was a way that they had of viewing the stars, or where it was actually at the moment, or if it was just like a map or something. But most of the controls that I was trying to operate, I was trying to see if I could open a door, because there was some what looked like doorways on the other side of the room. But most of them didn't seem to do anything. There were some controls that made these lines move on the screen, but nothing opened the door. There was one control that caused the star pattern to move. Not the stars relative to each other, but the whole thing just moved all at once, and that was real disorienting, because my only reference for standing upright, other than my sense of balance, was the chair and the door had just come in. So that may have brought someone, or it could have just been a coincidence, but I turned and there was a man, well, at least I thought he was a man, standing in the doorway. I thought it was somebody there to help me, to rescue me, take me out of there. So I tried to ask him questions. I was telling him about these creatures that I had seen, and but he didn't answer me, and I thought maybe that was because he was wearing a helmet over his head. So when he led me out of there, I went, only too willingly to, if he was going to help me escape. And so when we got outside the craft, at this point, it was inside of a large room, either a building, like, sort of a hangar-like thing, or maybe part of a larger craft. And I tried to look around, but he seemed to be in a big hurry. He led me out of this larger room. And it was quite a relief just to be outside, away from those creatures, be into the brighter light and cooler air, much more breathable. And so he led me down a hallway to a room and left me with some other people who were dressed like him, except they weren't wearing helmets. And so I started in with all my questions again, what was going on. Actually, it was just a bunch of babbling and screaming, but I was trying to get them to tell me something, and they weren't answering me. So I started to have a lot of misgivings about whether I was rescued or not, you know. They started leading me over to this table. You know, I'd had enough of laying on tables, you know, but they were trying to get me to lay down on this thing, so I started trying to fight them. And I was still pretty weak from when I regained consciousness, but, you know, my panic gave me a little extra strength, but they were way too strong. They were able to get me up on the table pretty easy, but I got one arm free and reached under the edge of this mask they put over my face and tried to pull it away, but before I could get it off of there, I blacked out. And so the next thing I recalled was waking up. It was cold out. I was on a hard pavement, and there was a light above me, so I looked to see where the light was coming from, and it went off just as I looked. So it was either like a light fixture or a hatch closing or something, but then it was just this shiny metallic thing hovering above the road, and then it just shot straight up into the sky. It was gone from sight so incredibly fast, but it didn't make a sound. It was pretty silent, and I could feel a faint warmth on my face, but other than that, it just sort of moved the tree as it went past. Just the air moving around it a little bit. And so I looked around and I saw the lights of the city down below, the little town of Heber. This is the town nearest where this happened, I recognized. So again, I didn't know where I was getting the strength, but I, in a panic, just ran down into the town. And there was a building with lights on and smoke coming out of the chimney, and I went and pounded on the door, and nobody came. So I went on down across the bridge, across the next bridge, and there was a little service station, Exxon station there, with 3 telephone booths in a row. Went into the telephone booth, picked up the receiver, and it was out of order. And, but I went into the next one and it worked. And that part of the country at that time, you could talk to the operator without even putting coins in the machine. And so I called my family, my brother-in-law, and he said he'd get my brother and come and get me. And so I just collapsed there. It seemed like the next thing I knew they were there, but you know, it must have taken them a half an hour to get there. But they found me in the phone booth with my feet braced against the door. And I was in pretty bad shape. I tried to talk to them about, what had happened, but it was too hysterical. I broke down and I said, well, don't try to talk right now. But in what was being said, they gathered that what I was assuming that this was the same night that I'd been taken, and they said, Travis, you've been gone for 5 days, and feel your face. And I had 5-day growth of beard, and And so that was quite a shock too. I looked at the date on my watch and it had changed, and I just kind of, lapsed into, I couldn't, function any further than that. They took me in and had quite a emotional reunion with my mother and some family members, during these 5 days of search, the sheriff had tried to keep the lid on things, not telling the media about what had happened, and but it got out with 50 searchers, and they've all got families, and they tell them what they're doing. So it was a worldwide news story, and there were media from all over the world in town, and I was in such a fragile condition that my brother felt it was smart to just get me out of there. So he wanted to, take me to the doctor and check me out and everything. So during the search, he'd met a UFO investigator who said, if he's ever returned, come to us, and we can, provide all this research, medical testing and whatnot to make sure he's okay, which is quite a remarkable thing, So he called this guy up and set up a meeting with his doctor and his membership, but it was really a terrible mistake. This it's kind of a disreputable group. It was kind of represented in the movie as a FAR. It's another group. It no longer exists, but it turned out the guy wasn't really a doctor, and it was just a big fiasco. So finally, went back to my brother's house, and the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, which was based in Tucson at that time, figured out from the various conflicting media reports, because my brother just arbitrarily, to throw the media off, had said, well, he's in a Tucson hospital, but they checked, and that wasn't true. So they called the house and figured out, and persuaded my brother that they could provide some legitimate medical care to make sure I was okay. And so I went in and saw a couple of legitimate medical doctors that were in the APRO membership, and had a whole battery of tests run. Already the media, once the murder theory went away, they were trying to explain it away as drugs, and this original flaky group tried to, claim that it was a drug hallucination. But some of the medical tests that were done were, I had blood and urine samples put through the county medical examiner's drug screen. It showed no trace of any drug in my body. And I had a EKG, EEG, and so a lot of other tests. And they continued with quite a few tests, and that was ongoing. Anyway, Dr. Harder administered performed some regressive hypnosis, and that was the first time I was able to finally verbalize what had happened to me without the fear. With the fear there, I couldn't even get it out. I'd just break down. I was pretty traumatized by the whole thing. Maybe modern audiences, they hear about that and they think, that's not so fantastic. They've been raised on, the movie special effects kinds of things, But this is real life, and I think under the circumstances, the pain I was in, the feeling of suffocation and claustrophobia, all that, combined with suddenly seeing these creatures, just contributed to the panic I was feeling, especially that suffocation. Now in the movie, they have the actor struggling to breathe with this membrane over his face. Now that didn't happen to me, but I was feeling suffocating. I couldn't breathe, and the air just, it wasn't, I don't know whether the atmosphere wasn't right or had something to do with the injury that from being hit by the beam, it interfered with lung function or something. But when you can't breathe, there's nothing that's going to make you panic more, and especially in a real closed-in space like that. So other people think they might have been able to handle it better. This is me talking to Leo Sprinkle, who performed a lot of the psychiatric examinations. This is me talking to J. Allen Hynek. And there was a lot of research going on back and forth, a lot of testing and a lot of theories trying to explain it all away. And in the book I document every allegation that the skeptics made, and one by one I disprove those. But in the aftermath of all this came the movie, and we were doing interviews for the movie, and it was Hard Copy or Entertainment Tonight or one of those. Wanted to go out to the site, and this was in the middle of winter, and there was 3 feet of snow out there, but they wanted to go anyway. It's almost impossible to get there, so they rented one of these big snow cats that they use at the ski run, and we went plowing through the drifts and went back there and did the interview on the site. And we had a little trouble finding it, but I thought it was because of the snow. But apparently, Mike, he was doing the interview with me, he was the crew boss. He noticed a big change in the trees there, and so, he didn't ever say anything to us or the interviewers. And he went back after the snow melted and started checking things out. And he discovered that the trees right near where the craft came down had suddenly gotten a lot bigger. And so he took a core sample, and you can see from this sample that, you could, especially if you could see the whole slide. I think what you're seeing is more complete than what I'm seeing here. But you can see that counting back the number of years to the incident, the winter of 75, 76, that the rings were really broad. And from that point back, they're much, much thinner. And he was able to calculate, a tree is not just a cylinder, it's a tall cone, actually. And using the formula for the volume of a cone, he was able to determine that these trees had produced 36 times the previous growth rate for producing, wood fiber. Just an incredible jump. And during the search, other researchers went out there and measured some unusual ozone readings. Of course, those dissipated very quickly, but there was also some magnetic readings that were really strange, that there was a kind of a dip on one side of the clearing, and in the direction that the craft had left, there was a spike with a polarity reversal. And all that was charted out and put into the APRO file. Well, when Paramount, was helping them research, preparing for the movie, we went to try to get the file, and it had pretty much disappeared. And they wanted us to go and see what we could do about getting the police file. And since it was a closed case, the sheriff's department said, sure, no problem. Come back tomorrow, we'll have a copy for you. Well, by the time we went back, they said, we can't find it. It's gone. So another disappearing file. But the sheriff, I don't think he was hiding it, because he had some copies of some of that material in his own personal files that he let us have. And there was a lot of interesting things in there. Some other hunters, campers in that area had seen the craft. And but one of the most interesting things was that during the preparation, the media blitz before the movie, a guy called up and said that he had been out there deer hunting at the time of the incident, and he described the terrain, and this is a very remote area, and you'd have to be there to be able to describe what he was describing. The location was never precisely, laid out in any media reports. So, that caught my attention that he, had to have been there to at least know the terrain. But he said he was on the next ridge and he saw the glow of the craft and the blast of the beam and all this. And so I thought that was pretty impressive. But I was just at home for a day and back off on the road doing interviews. So I told Tracy Torme, the scriptwriter, about this guy, and unbeknownst to me, they flew him out to Hollywood, interviewed him, and for whatever reason, Paramount decided to have him polygraphed. And so they enlisted the services of the state police polygraph examiner, who was now in private practice at that time in Phoenix, to test him. And it was very strange results. He was proven to be telling the truth about being there, about seeing the craft, and about why he didn't come forward at the time. He explained to me on the phone that he'd been in military intelligence at the time. He was stationed in Texas, and he'd asked his superior, should I come forward? And these guys are accused of murder. And he said his superior officer said, well, unless they're indicted, just stay out of it. So he didn't. He said he always felt bad about that. And he said he could, that his wife was with him, he said, and that even though they were now divorced, that she would verify that this really happened. But on the test, it showed that he, yes, was in military intelligence. Yes, he did see these things. But when they questioned him about his connections to Philip Klass and the people who were trying to discredit this, he flunked it just as badly as you could, which was very alarming. But Paramount just, warned him, and haven't heard or seen from him since. But it's always bothered me because, it's proven that here is someone from military intelligence, right there, in such a remote area with a high-powered rifle, and that's just always kind of bothered me. It seems like too big of a coincidence. This is the polygraph examiner from the first two tests that I took and passed. These were arranged through the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and Mike and I have been off and on, and in our relationship, and a lot of harsh things went back and forth because of not just them leaving that night and leaving me there to my fate. I have no bad feelings about that. I think he thinks I think that, and my family's criticism of him. But even more than that, it brought a lot of negative things into all of our lives, and so, he was kind of like, if you hadn't have been so stupid as to get out of the truck and go over there, none of this would be happening. Had a federal investigator come and just harass him about contracting. I wrote up a confession and tried to get him to sign it. It's a totally false confession. The investigator's the one that wrote it up. He tried to claim that his one-time partner in contracting, a brother, didn't exist. And he says, we're having a family reunion right now. I'll go and introduce you to him. He does exist. So they were just trying to do anything they could to put pressure on him. We got the message that, shut up or we'll make trouble for you. And we did find out that this investigator went down to the sheriff and got a look at the file on the UFO matter. So I think it was related. And there have been a number of things connected to the government that have been quite disturbing that kind of added up over time. I did an interview here just a couple of years ago with a lady that was a reporter for the local newspaper, and she was doing volunteer work with the Forest Service the following summer, doing fire watch. And there's a lookout tower called Gentry Tower just a mile or two to the west of the site where the incident happened. And a group of government men came through, and they had all these instruments, and they wanted to know what they were doing. And these guys said, "Well, we're just doing a survey of magnetic readings on the ground here." I know that these things are done, and that the various agencies have mapped out the magnetic lines on the Earth. But my understanding of that was that you'd have an airplane with a long cable, and the instrument would be hung below it, and they just fly over the area. So it didn't make sense to me that that they need a whole team of federal guys to go do this on the ground. So that was suspicious to me, that maybe they were measuring something else or up to some other kind of thing. So a lot of connections with federal government and whatnot in the aftermath of this. It's been real suspicious to me about some sort of covert involvement of some agency. But I've always been struck by coincidence in this. And one thing was, that face on Mars looks a whole lot like the guy that I saw on board the craft. Now, the painting that I helped the artist, this painting was made before these photos on Mars were ever taken. So, it's just a coincidence, and thought it was kind of interesting. Probably didn't mean anything, especially since that face on Mars, they showed it at a different time, and it didn't look the same. Anyway, the aftermath over these years has been really, really hard to deal with. The stress levels for such a long time after that happened were just so high, and so I'd wake up, and when I did sleep, with this vision of these eyes. Those creatures, when they were looking at me, it just seemed like they were looking right into me, right through me, in a way that just affected me. It's hard to explain, but it wasn't overtly hostile, but I just interpreted that way because the emotional feeling that I got was that that there was no emotion. When we interact with each other, if you sense that someone doesn't care about you one way or the other, we tend to interpret that as hostile. But beyond that, there was a sort of a stare that just very disturbing to me, and it just bothered me for a long time, and that was one of the main features of my nightmares for a long time. When I started doing a lot of interviews again when the movie came out, because at various times I'd get just so fed up with talking about it, I refused to do interviews for a while. But so when I started doing those again, so many, I was thinking, am I going to be able to tolerate this? Because every time I talked about it, it just knocked me up inside and break out in a sweat and just, kind of relive it. But doing all those interviews really did sort of help to desensitize me. Just putting myself through that stressful emotion over and over again has taken a lot of that away. It used to be I'd get up and talk to a group like you about this, and I'd just be, drenched with sweat before it was over. But it's gotten a lot better, but it still never fails to make me feel it. And but my nightmares kind of changed at the point after that. About the time the movie came out, a lot of the nightmares seemed to involve more of the human-looking type, and little bits of things where I was being moved or carried somewhere. Just dreams, though. Another really strange coincidence here, just a year or two ago, I found a topographical map of the state of Arizona, a whole book of them, and it was divided into areas. And I went to check out the area where the incident happened, and coincidentally, the area where it happened was Area 51. It just blows my mind. There's like almost 100 areas in this topographical map, but Area 51 is where it happened. So, go figure. Another one of those amazing coincidences. Either that or the map makers had a great sense of humor. But there's the inset of Area 51, and you can see just about in the upper third of it, you can see the rim crossing there, and where Turkey Springs was, or is. There was another odd coincidence that came to my attention. A radio host from the Great Lakes area said, "Do you realize that the night you were returned was the same night of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald?" Now, Gordon Lightfoot wrote a song about this, and the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald happened on November 5th, 1975. And the radio host told me that there was other UFO sightings in connection with this, and there was a lot of mystery about why the ship went down. And what was really strange was that the 29 crewmen disappeared without a trace. So, you know, the radio host was implying that they'd been abducted, and maybe so, because the place where the ship went down wasn't, the water wasn't much deeper than this ceiling of this room. When the ship hit bottom, the parts of it was still above the ocean. And they recovered the ship within hours, and they never recovered a single body of those 29 men. But the night that I was returned, I made my call for help to my brother Grant. And one of the crewmen on the Edmund Fitzgerald was named Grant Walton. So, another one of those weird coincidences. There's been a lot of them in connection with this. It turned out that the actor who played Mike Rogers was a second double cousin or something, that he was related to him, and a lot of coincidences and involved in the whole thing, which I go into a lot of detail in the book, but I'm going to get ready to start taking some questions from people. As far as the polygraph was concerned, about the time the movie came out, a UFO investigator from the Midwest, Jerry Black, called Tracy up and said, "What are you doing making a movie about this crazy thing? Don't you know that's all been disproven?" And he, you know, had heard all this stuff from Philip Klass, and so they argued about it. And well, the upshot of the whole thing was that he wanted to have new polygraph tests done, you know. And Tracy dropped out of the argument, but Mike Rogers continued it, and basically they went back and forth and wound up arranging new polygraph tests for him, for me, and for Alan Dallas. And he arranged them with Cy Gilson, who was in private practice. And he was using, you know, state-of-the-art methods that have been developed at the University of Utah, in which the examiner scores it and the computer scores it. And so there was kind of a double scoring system to, you know, to remove the possibility of examiner bias or anything like that. And modern equipment, the best there is, and we all passed at the highest ratings on new tests. I myself took 2 new tests. So, and then last August of 2008, I sought out more testing. Cy Gilson had retired, so the most rigorous testing I could find was in the state of New Mexico, because results are admissible in court there. So I checked around, and other examiners recommended this one guy. He was the best. He did the testing for the Albuquerque Police Department, New Mexico State Prison, even the United States Marshals Service. And I took 2 more tests from him and passed them at the highest level. So up to this point, I've taken 6 lie detector test, which I passed in regards to this matter. So I think as far as polygraph's concerned, enough already, you know. But, you know, there's a lot of evidence. I go into great detail in the book, and there's some more in the new book, which will be available in a week. And, you know, it's all there. And up to now, my main criticism of my critics has been making up their minds without looking at the evidence. You know, as well documented as this case is, and it's very extensive, absolute proof has, you know, been impossible to produce. But I think overwhelmingly the skeptic's case has been, you know, according to observers, totally demolished. In the book, I quote Emerson, condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. So, you know, my reply to my critics continues to be, you don't have a right to an opinion if you don't look at the facts. So all I've asked is just take a look at the evidence and, you know, let the chips fall where they may. Think what you want to think, but don't go by hearsay, because there was a lot of rumors flying around, just totally ridiculous things. I'm going to open it up for questions. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Travis. As a MUFON state director, I'm most interested in what did they look like. It looks like you were taken by Greys and returned maybe by Nordics. Can you describe their height, weight, complexion, exactly what they looked like compared to you?
Well, I worked with an artist, you know, he did 30 different versions before I picked the one that was closest, which still isn't exact, of course, but so those illustrations that are there, and they're in the book, are pretty accurate. The ones that were called Greys, they're called Greys now. Back then, this was relatively new. There weren't a whole lot of other similar things, at least none that I knew of. They were short, hairless beings. One thing that differs from what I consider a traditional Grey description is the eyes. These eyes were huge, but they were actually, I actually saw them blink. You know, they were like a regular eye, but just very, very large. And but you know, the human type being, they were you know, they were kind of Nordic looking, but there was something very odd about their eyes that I just never have been able to figure out. And you know, as far as the artistic renderings are concerned, that's something I don't feel that I ever got completely correct. But they were very young, healthy looking, very strong looking, and kind of alike in a family sort of way, but not like identical twins. So I've often wondered if they might have been humans. You know, I don't know. If there was some connection with some Earth-based agency, maybe they were operating on behalf of them. I did not see any insignia or writing or you know, anything, but you know, I took it to be a uniform. They were all dressed the same, but no markings. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, were they about your height, would you say?
Well, yeah, my height, they're a little taller. They were big, healthy, strong people. They were easily able to overpower me, and you know, I was a logger. I had a little strength when I wasn't in an injured state. So,
thank you. Thank you.
Next question.
Hello, I have a few short questions. Okay, when you got out of the truck and you are close to the craft, and in the movie shows that your face is like smiling, like a little bit curiosity or some kind of attracted to the craft. and like invited, feeling of invited. You like, I like to be close to the. Did it correct you?
Well, that wasn't precisely the way it was in the movie, you know. When we were doing all these interviews, they interviewed Alan Dallas, and he said it looked to him like I was just compelled, like I was just being drawn in some hypnotic way towards it. But, you know, it was really different than that. I was very curious about seeing it up close and like that. And, you know, when I did get up close, I was, you know, standing there in awe, but a lot of fear. And but at the same time, my initial motivation was just being a dumb show-off, you know, to the guys in the truck, because it made them panic, and so that kind of got me going. But I live to regret that. So it wasn't really like that. And you know, in the movie, they had it looking like lava, molten lava. But when we were telling him it looked like molten steel, fresh from a blast furnace, we're talking like white hot. It was a golden sort of a color, not reddish like that.
Oh, okay.
So,
now, yeah, please. Next one. I think I saw on the TV and the drama, your drama. I mean, the TV movie, and as far as I remember, when you landed in the ground, you returned to the ground. You were naked. Were you naked? Or
no, that was Hollywood. They got to put nudity into everything.
I wanted to make sure that you know how to measure accurate information.
When I was returned, I was wearing the same clothes that I had been wearing.
Okay.
They did film some scene where I come upon some lovers in a car, and they're naked, and I'm naked, and everybody's screaming. But fortunately, they did not use it.
Okay. Now,
time's up.
Okay, sorry.
Now, if anything more was to happen, I would not make it public. You know, when I was returned, it was already international news, and so I was forced to, you know, I didn't voluntarily come forward about anything. So they tell me I'm out of time, but I will be out in the lobby with a few of my books.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Answer some more questions. Thank you. Thank you very much.